Good day, good morning, good evening. It's 1 o'clock here in Geneva, and so we start on the third session of the series we have as part of the Minamata Online Season 2, the series on national reporting. My name is Claudia ten Hafe, and today I'm again joined by my colleagues Richard, Anna, and Lynn as well. And we would like to take you through the next set, the part 2 of the series that focuses specifically on the reporting guidance. Next slide, please. This session, just like the one we had on Tuesday, is rich in content and might seem quite heavy. We'd like to assure you right from the beginning that not only is this session recorded and you are able to come back to it at any point later because all of our recordings are on the website, but also that all of the information that will be projected today here on the screen is also available in various documents that we make reference to. And of course, the presentation will be made available to you on the website as well. So please feel assured that you are able to return to any of this information. But today we will go again in 3 parts. The first is to give you a short introduction, but then the bulk of the time will be spent on the articles 8 all the way up till 19, where the remainder of the 22 questions are of the overall 43 question set that forms part of the full format of reporting. And we have time for questions and answers, of course, or we will try to make time for questions or answers. But please feel free to record comments or questions in the chat box, and we will try to already weave in responses, if possible, as it comes up. With that, let me take you to the next slide. And just to recall that it is under Article 21 that all parties are to report to the Conference of the Parties through the Secretariat on the measures they have taken to implement the provisions of the Convention, and also on the effectiveness of such measures and possible challenges in meeting the objective of the Convention. The reporting format comes from Decision 1.8. This was a decision that was taken by the conference at its first meeting, and it includes in its annex the full format of it. And in this decision, it also recorded that reporting is to take place in 2 steps. The one is the short reports, where 4 questions are answered, versus the full reports, where the entire set of questions is to be answered. We therefore talk about the short reports that happen every 2 years and the full reports that happen every 4 years. That meaning that the short reports are, of course, inclusive in the longer version in the 4-year cycle. Going to the next slide. In addition to the decision on the reporting format, at the 3rd meeting of the Conference of the Parties, the Conference of the Parties requested the Secretariat to prepare draft reporting guidance to assist parties in fulfilling the obligation to report. The reporting guidance is not to be a manual, but it is to be a way of clarifying the information that the questions are seeking. And this draft guidance has been made available already. It is up on the web as document 17 and has also been part of a comment series that has gone to parties and others earlier in the year. So it's not an unfamiliar document to you necessarily, or certainly we hope not. Either way, this document, as mentioned, is up on our website. And for those of you that joined us on on Tuesday, we noted that there was a section missing. We have corrected it, and the advanced version of that document is up with the corrected section for document 17. Let me highlight that for today, because we have already dealt with the articles 3 to 7 in the Tuesday session, that today we will go to articles 8, emissions, 9, releases, 10 and 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, and 19. So that's a full rate of articles, but it's basically the second half of the reporting set, because in total there are 43 questions. So these articles represent about 22 of those questions. Before going right into that, let me just take you to the next slide. Just to give you an overview of how we will do this, just like on Tuesday, because the reporting format is, of course, divided into 5 parts. Part A being information about the party, Part B being all of the questions, and then Part C, D, and E for extra information. We will focus most of our attention today on the remainder of Part B, that is these questions in these articles that I just mentioned. You will see that for each question, or almost each question, there is a yes and no option. And then depending on that, there would be a set of answers underneath that you would follow through. Since the draft reporting guidance is set out in a way to first have a section of notes on the article and thereafter a suggested approach, we have used that same way of presenting the information here. So you will first be introduced to some notes and then to the suggested approach. And you can, of course, follow all of this also with your own copy of document 17 if you have it handy. We will also give you a short further orientation to the online reporting tool. And there are just some of the reminders of the icons we use alongside in our presentation. And with that, to the next slide, and to my colleague Richard, who will take us into the full questions upcoming. Over to you, Richard.
Sorry, I was on mute. So thanks so much, Claudia. Good day, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's going to be a packed session, so I will jump right into Article 8. So next slide, please. Thank you. In Article 8, Article 8 concerns controlling and, where feasible, reducing emissions of mercury and mercury compounds to the atmosphere through measures to control emissions from the point sources falling within the source categories listed in Annex B. That list is to the left of the slide, and it is as follows: coal-fired power plants, coal-fired industrial boilers, smelting and roasting processes used in the production of non-ferrous metals, waste incineration facilities, cement production facilities. As we go through the questions in the online reporting tool, we have, for the sake of brevity and due to the time constraints, we at times will be using only one. We will only be mentioning one of these sources, or rather, source categories. But once you get into the online reporting tool, the online reporting tool will provide you with the full menu of these point sources in the applicable questions. Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much. So now, the Article 8 in paragraph 3 also talks about party with relevant sources shall take measures to control emissions. And these applicable measures are as follows: best available techniques, BAT, best environmental practice, BEP, or associated emission limit values for new facilities. Measures, it also includes measures selected to control or reduce mercury emissions from existing sources. And lastly, the measures to control emissions can also include establish or maintain a mercury emissions inventory. Next slide, please. So we go into the online reporting tool question. 8.1 is not a direct or yes or no question, as you will see. Decision 1/8 requires the parties to identify any Annex D source categories, and we've sort of worked with that format for which there are new sources of emissions of mercury or mercury compounds as defined in paragraph 2C of Article 8. So as I said, this is not a yes or no question. So the questions will sequentially appear in the online reporting tool, but due to the limitation of the slides, we are only showing you the first part in this slide and the next part in the succeeding slide. Now, sorry, could you go back to the previous slide? Sorry about that. I just a little bit more to say that if the party has identified that it has in its territory new sources in any of the source categories listed in Annex D, it would check those source categories in the list and proceed to describe the measures. As I mentioned, we don't, because of the slide limitation, we're not able to show all of the sources, but once you are once you have access, the online reporting tool, the full menu of sources will be shown. Now, if the party has determined that it has in its territory no new sources in any of the source categories listed in Annex D, it would check no. For this, can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Here you will see the continuation of the question of 8.1. Now, if the party has required the use of BAT or emission limit values that are consistent with the application of BAT and best environmental practices to control and where feasible reduce emissions for new sources no later than 5 years after the date of entry into force of the convention for the party, the party would check the box that indicates yes. Now, they could also describe the measures, the BAT measures taken. I'm sorry. A quick note: if the party has determined that it has in its territory no new sources, check the no option and use the box provided for the explanation as prescribed in Decision 1.8. So this refers to the main question, and then where you can add the additional explanation. Now, um, if the party has determined, sorry, so if the party has required the use of BAT, it needs to describe certain items, which includes the measures taken, dates, and effectiveness, and also if the party has identified that in its territory new sources is in any of the source categories listed in Annex D, but has not required the use of BAT and BEP to control and where feasible reduce emissions, the party would reply no and then provide the explanation. Next slide, please. Okay, so proceeding to question 8.2. 8.2 asks the parties to identify any Annex D source categories for which there are existing sources of emissions of mercury or mercury compounds as defined in paragraph 2E of Article 8. Now, the question proceeds by asking for each of those source categories, select and provide details on the measures implemented under paragraph 5 of Article 8, and explain the progress that these applied measures have achieved in reducing emissions over time in your territory. A quick note before we proceed. So this is only the first part of the question. So it's a rather lengthy question. Potential sources of information that the party could use to determine whether there are new relevant sources in its territory could include, for example, emissions inventories or permitting requirements. These measures are listed as those contained in paragraph 5 of Article 8. Next slide, please. So here you will see a list of the point sources, and then following it are options. I'm sorry, I hope that you can see the text here, followed by options of the measures that the parties have taken. So the online reporting tool tries to facilitate the completing, answering the question by simply offering these options to the national focal points to check the applicable boxes. Now, if the party has identified that it has in its territory new sources in any of the source categories listed in Annex D, as you can see here, it would check the applicable sources, and more importantly, as you will also note in the slide, the online reporting tools provides a box for measures taken as well as for progress of each of these measures. So it's again facilitating the completion of the questionnaire for the national focal points. Next slide, please. So this is the last part of question 8.2, which asks whether measures for existing sources under paragraph 5 of Article 8 has been implemented no later than 10 years after the date of entry into force of the convention for the party. Now, if the party has implemented the measures within 10 years of entry into force, of the convention for it, the party would reply yes by checking the applicable yes box. Now, if the party has not implemented the measure within 10 years of entry into force of the convention for it, or the party has initiated action but has not completed it, the party would reply no and provide an explanation, including an indication of when it anticipates implementing the measures. Now, if the party, a suggested approach, if the party has determined that it has existing sources, check the no option and the use box provided for the explanation to indicate it has no existing sources. Next slide, please. 8.3 has the party asks the question, has the party prepared an inventory of emissions for relevant sources within 5 years of entry into force of the convention for it? If yes, the layout, if yes, please indicate the date, and also please indicate where the inventory is available. Next slide, please. If the party has not prepared an inventory, check no, and the party may wish to provide an explanation and an estimate of the date when the inventory will be completed. Quick reminder for the national focal points present, you have this last item to check if you have not been party for 5 years. So most parties have not been yet party for 5 years, so we would expect people to be checking this. But please note that this is in the last part of that question and might be missed. Next question, please. Question 8.4 asks, has the party chosen to establish criteria to identify relevant sources covered within a source category within a source category? So this is a yes or no question. So if yes, please explain the criteria for any category and include at least 75% of the emissions from that category, and explain how the party took into account guidance adopted by the Conference of Parties. If the party has chosen to establish, if the party has not chosen to establish criteria to identify relevant sources, check no. Next slide, please. Thank you. In Article 8, in question 8.5, has the party chosen to prepare a national action plan setting out the measures to be taken to control emissions from relevant sources and its expected targets, goals, and outcomes? Please note at the bottom, you will see that development of a national action plan setting out the measures to be taken is optional for a party. Now, if the party has decided to take this option, the party will check yes and submit submit the national action plan to the Conference of Party under this article no later than 4 years after the date of entry into force for the party. Now, the no response in the second half, just wanted to quickly sort of brief you on it, considers two scenarios. One is that if the party has decided to develop but has not completed the action plan, then it's requested to explain when it would be finalized. The other scenario is that if the party has developed its national action plan but has not submitted to the Conference of Parties, it's just required to provide an explanation on why. Next slide, please. We go into the Article 9 releases. So next slide, please. So Article 9 regulates the relevant sources, identifies sectors to regulate within 3 years, and the measures or options include release limit values, BAT-BEP, multi-pollutant control strategy, alternative measures, and it also, take note, it's the same options for new and existing facilities. To the questions, please. Next slide. In question 9.1, are there within the party's territory relevant sources of releases as defined in paragraph 2 of Article 9? So this is a 3-part question. Yes, no, I do not know. If yes, please indicate the measures in the space provided. We continue with the next slide, please. Question 9.2. Has the party established an inventory of releases from relevant sources within 5 years of entry into force of the convention for it? Now, if yes, check the yes box and provide the date and indicate where this inventory is available in the space provided. Note that the guidance on the methodology for preparing inventories of releases has not yet been adopted by the Conference of Parties. However, Relevant sources are set out in paragraph 5 of Article 9, and paragraph 5B refers to the best available techniques and best environmental practices. Although guidance on BAT-BEP are not yet available, paragraph 7A of Article 9, as I mentioned, has not been adopted by the COP. So the terms are defined, however, in Article 2 of the Convention. Next slide, please. So to continue, if the party indicated under question 9.1 that it has no relevant sources, check relevant sources do not exist in the territory, and no further explanation is required. If the party replied under question 9.1 that they do not know whether it has relevant sources, check no and repeat the explanation provided in 9.1. And lastly, if the party replied under question 9.1 that it has relevant sources but has not established an inventory, please check no and provide an explanation why it has not done so. Next slide, please. Here we proceed to Article 10 on environmentally sound interim storage of mercury other than waste. Now, just to be brief, decision 2/6 adopted guidelines on the environmentally sound interim storage of mercury other than mercury waste. It's available on the convention website. And as you all may know, Article 10 does not apply to waste mercury or mercury compounds. Let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. 10.1, question 10.1. Has the party taken measures to ensure that the interim storage of non-waste mercury and mercury compounds intended for a use allowed to a party under the convention is undertaken in an environmentally sound manner? So this is a three-part question. Yes, no, I do not know. So if the party has not taken any measures, please check no, and it may wish to provide clarification on why it has not taken any measures, and the party may do so in Part C or in Part E. Now, if the party does not know whether it has locations in its territory that are storing mercury on an interim basis, it will check I do not know and provide an explanation or information on the process it is following to enable it to make such a determination and when it expects to make that determination. And lastly, if the party has taken measures, the party would reply yes and specify the measures it has taken, for instance, the dates when the measures were taken and the effectiveness of those measures in the space provided in the online reporting tool. Next slide, please. So there's only one question on interim storage, and then we move quickly to mercury wastes. Now, for just a quick overview, under Article 11, each party shall take appropriate measures in several areas, namely on recovery, which includes use of recovered, recycled, reclaimed mercury from waste, definitely on environmentally sound management, and on the international transport control. On to the questions, please. Oh, sorry, one more item. Just as a reminder, the Basel Technical Guidelines on environmentally sound management of waste consisting of, containing, or contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds was adopted by the Basel Convention COP in 2015. A copy of the technical guidelines is available on the convention website, forms and guidance page. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So question 11.1. So asks, have measures outlined in Article 11, paragraph 3 been implemented for the party's mercury waste? This is a two-part question. So if the party has no mercury waste in its territory and hence does not need to implement the measures outlined in paragraph 3 of Article 11, it would answer no and provide that explanation in Part E, where parties can provide additional comments in free-form text, should they choose to do so. Now, if the party has not taken the measures outlined in paragraph 3 of Article 11, the party would reply no and check the applicable box and might wish to provide an explanation in Part C or in Part E for why it has not taken any measures. Now, if the party has undertaken the measures outlined in paragraph 3 of Article 11, the party would reply yes by checking the yes box. And as a note, kindly describe the measures taken, the dates on which the measures were taken, and the effectiveness of those measures. Next slide, please. So there are only two questions under in Article 11, and this is the second one, which asks under 11.2, are there facilities for final disposal of waste consisting of mercury or mercury compounds in the party's territory? So again, this is a three-part question: yes, no, or I do not know. Now, if yes, the information is available, please include how much waste consisting of mercury compounds has been subjected to final disposal under the reporting period, and please specify the method of the final disposal operation or operations in the space provided. If the party does not have facilities for final disposal of waste consisting of mercury or mercury compounds in its territory, it would reply no by checking the no box. Now, if the party has not determined whether it has facilities for final disposal of waste consisting of mercury or mercury compounds in its territory, but it is in the process of doing so, for instance, through the development of the Minamata initial assessment or through the development of an implementation plan, the party would reply, do not know, or I do not know, and check the appropriate box and provide an explanation in the space provided below the question. Next slide, please. Article 12 on contaminated sites. Now, Article 12 on contaminated sites endeavors parties to develop appropriate strategies for identifying and assessing sites contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds. It also requires the environmentally sound management of waste that retrieved from these sites, and also encourage parties to cooperate in developing strategies in addressing contaminated sites, among others. Guidance on the management of contaminated sites was adopted through decision MC3/6, and is also available in the convention websites, forums, and guidance page. Next slide, please. Under Article 12, we have question 12.1. Has the party endeavored to develop strategies for identifying and assessing sites contaminated by mercury or mercury compounds in its territory? This is a two-part question, as you will see. Now, if the party has developed such a strategy, it would respond yes, and it may wish to provide information such as the definition of contaminated site used by the party, the status of the strategy development, including either the date of the strategy or when it was finalized, or the anticipated date of its finalization. Now, where the it is also encouraged, parties are also encouraged to indicate where the strategy is available online, if it is online. If not online, the parties are encouraged to attach a copy of the strategy to the report or indicate where it can be accessed. Another item that the party may wish to include is the status of the implementation of any activities under the strategy for identifying, assessing, prioritizing, managing, and as appropriate, remediating contaminated sites. Now, if the party has not endeavored to develop such a strategy, it would reply no by checking the no box and provide information in the space provided below the question to clarify its position, including if it has plans to develop a strategy, and if so, when the strategy will be developed. And I think that wraps up my presentation, at least for now. And I turn the floor over to my colleague, Claudia, for Article 13. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you to all of you for still staying with us. There's a lot of information, and so we're just changing the voices amongst ourselves. Let me take you into Article 13, which the title of this article is, of course, Financial Resources and Mechanism. So this article has a number of questions attached to it for the reporting format. The first one is 13.1. Has the party undertaken to provide within its capabilities resources in respect of those national activities that are intended to implement the convention in accordance with its national priorities, policies, plans, and programs? And again, here it is a yes and no, but for both, there is the request to specify. In other words, if the party has undertaken, using its own capabilities to provide such resources, it would reply yes, and would specify some details in terms of the type or the amount and the years or anything else the party wishes to transmit. If not, the same box could be used to explain why that might be the case for the party. And of course, here, as in many other areas, if there are other forms of information or so that you wish to record as part of your national report in terms of effectiveness or challenges in meeting a particular obligation or provision, there's also space for you to do that. Let me take you to the next slide. I've paused because I think I've missed a slide that somehow went missing. So let me just introduce what a slide would have shown here, which is that question 13.1 was, of course, about financial resources. But now you will find that 13.2 is about the financial mechanism. And here I would like to, just as background, of course, recall that the financial mechanism of the Minamata Convention is composed of, on the one hand, the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, and on the other hand, the specific international program. In other words, the financial mechanism of the convention is composed of two parts. And so looking at this question, 13.2, this refers to that mechanism. And before I dive in, may I also just draw your attention that this is one of some supplemental questions we have in the reporting format. And just to recall what I said in one of the previous, or both perhaps of the previous sessions, that of course all questions in the reporting format are mandatory, but supplemental questions are voluntary for parties to fill in. Having said that, at its first meeting, the COP strongly encouraged parties to fill in information in the supplemental questions, as well as this would be important to gather as much as possible information that parties are able to transmit. So with that, just as provisor to this and also the next question, which is also a supplemental question, the question again is, has the party, here we have the slide I would have liked to have shown, the GEF on the one side and the specific international program on the other. But let me take you back to the question. Has the party provided funds for the mechanism? And again, it would provide the answer yes or no, depending on the status or the state of play for that party. And for both, there is again the request also to specify, or the invitation to specify why yes or why no. And by specify, we have set it out in the draft reporting guidance to be all kinds of information, whether that is the amount that has been contributed, the years the amount has been contributed, and or any other comment that would explain why a party has contributed, or perhaps why a party has not contributed. May I take you to the next slide, which is 13.2 and that 3, and that is the other supplemental question in the set of questions on the Article 13, and it goes, has the party provided financial resources to assist developing country parties and or parties with economies in transition in the implementation of the convention through other bilateral, regional or multilateral sources or channels? Here, of course, it means also that it might be support that has been extended in another way and not only through the GEF or through the specific international program. As we know, there are many, many other initiatives out there and many, many other sources of support that have supported the overall rapid progress under Minamata. And so this question provides the invitation of the opportunity to answer yes or no, and depending on the answer to, the party is also invited to further specify below. And as always, there's an opportunity to provide further comments, if any. If none, please just move to the next question. That takes me to the next slide. And with that, just the question related to Article 14, the questions related to Article 14. Article 14 is the article about capacity building, technical assistance, and technology transfer. And while I don't wish to read the entire article to you, what the question specifically refers to is the text that you have in paragraph 1 of that article. So here we go. question 14.1 is, has the party cooperated to provide capacity building or technical assistance pursuant to Article 14 to another party to the Convention? And here it is, of course, the relationship among parties to be supportive of each other in this common endeavor on Mercury. And again, the party would be invited to answer yes or answer no, and then to give specific information. And here we've just projected some of the text that you see in the reporting guidance. This specific information could be when capacity building or technical assistance was given. It could be which parties were being supported. It could be more information about what type of capacity building or technical assistance was provided. And it could even be an inclusion of figures in terms of how much or if it was in-kind contribution, an idea of what that in-kind contribution was. Which takes me to the next slide. Again, this is a supplemental question with the caveat that I've earlier outlined, and it goes, has the party received capacity building or technical assistance pursuant to Article 14? In other words, here the question is turned around. It is not a matter of has a party provided, but has a party received, being the recipient of capacity building and technical assistance. And again, the party could then answer yes or no and specify accordingly. Which takes me to the next slide. Has the party promoted and facilitated the development, transfer, and diffusion of and access to up-to-date, environmentally sound alternative technologies? We have in paragraph 3 of Article 14 a call for this. And so the party would respond either yes or no, or there may be another box that it would like to tick. In either case, to specify below how the party has promoted or facilitated the development, transfer, and diffusion of such technologies or access to such technologies as part of the overall support. And again, if it is no, there may be a reason that the party would like to put here to outline the context of the party's endeavor. It takes me forward to the next slide. And that is, of course, the health aspects. And the next slide, here we go. Article 16 has a number of items. Parties are encouraged to develop and implement strategies and programs to identify and protect populations at risk, to look at occupational exposure, to put in place appropriate healthcare services, and to establish the appropriate institutional and other capacities required. And this article is quite special in the Minamata Convention because it also, of course, recognizes the role of the WHO and also the role of the ILO. And here you have, just for your quick reference, one of a number of linkages to WHO guidances and other information that you may find helpful in considering this question. All of this is, of course, also in the reporting guidance. Moving forward, the question under 16 is, have measures been taken to provide information to the public on exposure to mercury in accordance with paragraph 1 of that article? Again, a straightforward yes or no. And then the supplemental is, if yes, describe those measures. And here just projected very shortly are some of the items we've put forward in the draft guidance. It could be that the measures that are taken are described, or the date that measures were taken. Maybe you already know the outcome of the measures taken. And all of this could be very helpful and interesting and valuable information to the overall understanding of progress being achieved under the Minamata Convention. That takes me forward to the next question. Have any other measures been taken to protect human health in accordance with this article? And again, the party would answer yes or no, and the party is then invited to provide supplementally, a supplemental, and if having answered yes, the measures that have been taken. Again, just wanted to say that, of course, there's always the option of putting other information in free text if you find that this is not enough space for you to put forward the position of your government. There's always the option of putting other information into Part D in free text. Let me take you forward to the next slide and hand over to my colleague Anna to take you through these. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We will go now through Article 17 on information exchange. Next slide, please. So paragraph 1 of Article 17 says that each party shall facilitate the exchange of scientific, technical, economic, and legal information on the reduction or elimination of the production, use, trade, emissions, and releases of mercury and mercury compounds, information on technically and economically viable alternatives, and epidemiological information concerning health impacts. For that paragraph and article, we have one question. Next slide, please. Which says that, has the party facilitated the exchange of information? So if the party has facilitated this exchange of information, the party would reply yes, and ideally provide relevant information, including, for example, information on relevant online sources of information identified by name, URL, language, with a brief description of the information contained if possible. If the party has not facilitated the exchange of information referred to in paragraph 1, this article, the party would reply no and might wish to provide comments in Part C and or Part E. Next one, please. So moving forward with Article 18 on public information, awareness, and education. Paragraph 1 of Article 18 outlines that each party shall, within its capabilities, promote and facilitate provisions to the public of available information on health and environmental effects of mercury, alternatives, topics identified in Article 17, results of research and monitoring activities under Article 17, and activities to meet obligations under Convention, and as well education, training, and public awareness related to the effects of exposure to mercury and mercury compounds on human health and the environment in collaboration with other organizations. For this article and paragraph, we have one question, which says, next slide, please, have measures been taken to promote and facilitate the provision to the public of the kind of information listed in Article 18, paragraph 1? If the party has taken measures, would reply yes, and specify the issues on which it has taken measures to make information publicly available, the dates, and the effectiveness of the measures taken. If the party has not taken measures to promote and facilitate the provision to the public of any kinds of information listed in paragraph 1 of this article, the party would reply no and might wish to provide comments, including a plan or estimated date when it might expect to take such measures in Part C or in Part E of the comments in the reporting tool. Now we will come to the last article and comments, so back to you, Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This last article, not the last article in our convention, but just the last article that is related to a question in the reporting format, is the article titled Research, Development and Monitoring. So let me dive right in. This article in its paragraph 5 sets out that parties shall endeavor to cooperate to improve within their capacities a number of areas. And we have listed these along over 2 slides. Firstly is in the work with regard to inventories. Secondly, with regard to modeling and geographically representative understandings of levels of mercury and mercury compounds in vulnerable populations and specific by other media, including biota, etc. Thirdly, it is the assessment of the impact of mercury and mercury compounds on human health and the environment. And fourth is a harmonized methodology, bringing all of these angles together. And moving to the next slide, parties are also to endeavor in the development and also the sharing of information on the environmental cycle, transport, transformation, and fate of mercury and mercury compounds in a range of ecosystems. Also information on commerce and trade as it relates to mercury and mercury compounds, but also as it relates to mercury added products, and further information and research on technical and economic availability of mercury-free products and processes, as well as best available techniques and best available practices, our BAT-BEPS. In other words, there is a significant list of areas where there is research, development, and monitoring ongoing already in parties, and the exchange of the information that comes from this, that has already been established and that is coming forward in the future, would be extremely helpful for parties to have. And so, moving to the next slide, the reporting format therefore asks in question 19.1, has the party undertaken any of this above mentioned research, development, and monitoring in accordance with paragraph 1 of that article? And here the party would either reply yes and no, the familiar tree, and then would be invited to describe the actions it has taken. And we've displayed a little bit here, but it could be that it is specifying, the party specifies the year the activities were undertaken, what kind of activities they were, perhaps with whom, with which other party those activities were taken, as it is about sharing that information and that having access to that information as well, and also giving reference to the published materials or reports that show the research, development, or monitoring information that has come forward. And especially at times when the information might not be readily available online, the party may simply want to attach the report in some way. Which gives me great pleasure to say we are basically through, and the next slide is just to recall that besides all of these questions, which we've now introduced to you, these 43 questions, there is always the invitation to also put any information you wish to bring forward to the attention of the Conference of the Parties regarding comments on possible challenges in meeting the objective. And all of that information can be put under Part C. There's also the invitation, the supplemental part, which is Part D, which is comments regarding the reporting format and possible improvements. So should you along the way find a tweak or so that you might find important and necessary also for the future of the reporting format, please take this opportunity to share those thoughts. This is not the same as if you run into a technical problem and need our help immediately to help you complete this report. This is more forward-looking for information that we may want to be able to have also as Secretariat and of course as the COP in case there are some areas that need to be looked at again. And lastly, just Part E, you've heard us mention it a number of times, but additional comments can be made here. Moving on, I would like to hand over to my colleague Anna.
Thanks, Claudia. I will guide now you through a quick live demo session where you can see all the features and how the online reporting tool works. I will be using a test account, so let me 1 second to take control of the screen. I hope now you can see my screen. Here we have the screen for the login. You, as national focal points, have received the login credentials along with the URL to go into the tool. So you can see I'm logging in, and here you will find your main screen, which is also the user account screen, where you have all the instructions, and as well you will find the main reference documents that we ask you please, and we encourage you to read before going into the tool and start filling the questions. You will have access to the draft reporting guidance that both Claudia and Richard have made reference to. This is the reporting guidance. And then you will find also a link to the online reporting tool user guide with all the instructions that now I will show lively. Below, you will see a table with your 2021 progress report. Now I will continue because I have been working a little bit before with this test account. And if you have reported into 2019, you will see as well your report. So I will keep working on the report. And here I start with the screen now. Since I have been filling everything, I'm gone through the part D, but when you start the report, you will go through part A, which is the information on the party. The information on the party will be pre-populated based on your national focal point and the dates on which your party deposited the instrument of ratification and the date of entry into force. On the top right side, you can access to your account, which is the first screen I show you, and that also, let me just going back, that helps you in case that you want to log out and keep working afterwards. There's a button to log out from the tool. You can see that nicely there's a label saying that my previous draft has been loaded and I can keep working. The online reporting tool is in 6 UN languages, and from that top right side, you can switch to French. Sorry, my browser, to Spanish, Arabic. Now everything goes to the left, Chinese, and Russian. So you can fill in all your questions in any of the 6 UN languages. On the right side, there's this completion status where you can see if you have completed each part and each article with questions. And as it was mentioned in our previous session, even if we encourage that you go step by step, starting with part A, following with part B and all its articles, and then moving forward with comments, you can, due to the complexity of the national reports, you can jump into any question. If you have any doubts during the filling your questions, below you can see that there's a link where you can contact the Secretariat in case you need any kind of support. Another feature that I wanted to highlight here is that for every question where there's a reference to the Minamata Convention text, you can click and you will go immediately to the paragraph. So it's easier then for you to make this reference. There's also, as you know, a pipelining based on the logic of the questions to make it easier for you to go through the reporting. So for example, if in question 8.1 I reply no, then the please explain box display. If I reply yes, then I can see only the option of uploading a file. Another interesting feature that I wanted to show you now, and let me go to one example here. I have the report from Burkina Faso, that for example, if national focal point, if a party has already submitted a notification to the convention, then this information will be harvested from our database and will be immediately pre-populated into the reporting tool. So as I also mentioned the other day, the reporting tool is integrated with the website. So here you can see that, for example, for question 7.2 and question 7.3, since we have received notification from Article 7.3 and we have also a national action plan from this party, then the question, the answer is already pre-populated and there's a label indicated that to the national focal point when filling the report, so there's no need to duplicate that information. The only last thing that I wanted to show you is that once that you have completed the report, of course, you can always save the draft, but then there's this preview button that you click before your submission where you can check all your report. When you are done, once you are done, of course, you can click submit and the report will be sent to the Secretariat. I will stop here. If you have any doubts, please read the Secretariat. You have also all the material, the presentation, video reporting from this session and the previous ones on the website. And I will hand it over now to Lynn to keep on national focal points. Thank you very much.
While Lynn is unmuting herself, and let me just the big headline target is, of course, the 31st of December 2021 for all of the reports. But let me go straight into the next slide because I see some questions in the chat box, especially about the national focal points. And just to reiterate, all login credentials were sent last Wednesday to national focal points on the database here at the Minamata Convention. So all of the focal points should have received in their email the login credentials. We have seen that at least 13 parties have already logged into the system and have begun, we hope, on finding their way around the tool. There might be some that have not yet done so, or there might be some national focal points that have changed, but we have not received that notification, in which case, if we can go forward 1 or 2 slides, please, to the national focal points. We really hope to have the update of that ASAP. So let me just ask Lynn, could you speak to this slide, please, for all of those that may need to either check who their national focal point is and then seek that person out to ensure the login credentials are received, or to alert us that if that national focal point is not the correct one, maybe she has had a promotion and moved on to a new job, or maybe there's some other organizational change, then to please alert us to that change so that the login credentials can be sent to that updated person. But Lynn, could you just outline where to find the information of who is the national focal point to the party? In other words, who would have received the login credentials, and also what to do if that is perhaps not anymore or not at all the correct person to have received that. Lynn, over to you.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Hello, everyone. So here's as you can see on the screen now, is the National Focal Point webpage, where you can find all the information on the National Focal Point designated by parties to the convention by clicking to the drop-down menu. So as already mentioned by Claudia, all the emails that that contains the personalized login details to the reporting online tool was sent to all the national focal point that we have as the primary national focal point that we have in the national focal point database on the website. So please go to the website and then check if your national focal point is not been updated yet. Please alert us so that we can update the database as soon as possible. And if your country has not yet nominated a national focal point to the convention, we encourage you to do so as well. And all the information to complete the formalities of such a designation is available on the website. Moving on to the next slide, please. So the Annex 1 is the form, and the Annex 2 is the model letters for the designation of national focal point under the convention. And the form and the model letters can be also found on the website as well. And please note that this form should be completed and returned under the cover of the official nomination letters from the government official contact point to the UN Environment Program, or from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or from the permanent mission to the UN in Geneva or to the UN Environment Programme to the attention of the Executive Secretary of the Minamata Convention on Mercury. And please note that the self-nomination cannot be considered. So if you have any question on the national focal point, please send your email to our Secretariat mailbox and we'll be very happy to answer your query. Thank you, and over to you, Claudia.
Thank you, Lynn. And watching the clock, we are basically at 2 o'clock. We have tried to answer some of the questions that have come up in the chat. We hope we have. There's one question that I see, and I see it repeated. It's the one that Klaus asked about that EU countries have, of course, Mercury regulations, and there's a very specific context for all of that, which translates into requirements from the Minamata Convention and for all its member states. And so he asks, is a reference to this regulation sufficient when answering? Describe which measures you have taken. I would firstly just invite you just to look at whatever information you can find in the draft guidance in this regard. Of course, any regulation that is put in place, whether it is at your national or in the EU case at a larger scale, is part of the information that would be put forward. But please try to be as specific as possible in your answers to these questions from your national perspective as well, or in addition to the EU perspective. Having said that, this is of course in the hands of the sovereign parties to decide how to transmit this information, but for the importance of the information to be shared and for the COP to understand how the progress is progressing, how the implementation is progressing, we do encourage you to try to be as specific and elaborate as possible and as viable in your reporting. This might not be exactly the shortest answer to your question, and I can understand the complexity of that. Of course, the EU also reports overall as a party, as the EU is a party of the Minamata Convention in addition to the member states that are parties. And so there is a perhaps special way that those countries that this appeal affects would need to respond or to look at. With that, we hope that we have seen all of your questions. We hope that you have received your login credentials, and if you have not, that you at least know where to find who the login credentials were sent to. And if that's not the person, please let us know ASAP so that we can redo the login credentials, because of course every national report is that country's report, and so it's important that the person that country, that party has appointed to be responsible for the report is indeed the correct one, firstly on our database and also as custodian of the login credentials for that report. If there's something else that you needed to know, or that we perhaps didn't see you ask, or that we didn't answer sufficiently, please just be in touch. And just to remind that this is the third in the 4 set sessions within the Greater Minamata Online Season 2 that focuses on national reporting. We are available to you in all this time until the 31st of December to try to help you should you have any query or question at all. But we've set out on the 22nd of November, which is 40 days before the deadline, 2 time slots for you in 2 different time zones for any last minute, so to speak, questions or queries or problems that you might have. And we hope that many, many more parties will have been able to access the online reporting tool by that stage. And just to say, please be in touch if we can be helpful in any way. With that, on behalf of the whole Secretariat and my colleagues, thank you for joining us yet again on national reporting, and we look forward to perhaps having you at some of our other sessions as well next week. Just to say, we are starting on briefing on some of the documents for COP 4.1, in other words, the online segment that will open on the 1st of November. Those sessions in 2 time zones, one on Monday in the Geneva Monday afternoon and one in Geneva morning on Tuesday. Please join us at a time that's most convenient to you. And thereafter will also come the regional meetings. And then we are really just 6 weeks away from COP 4.1 and look forward to being with you then. With that, thank you very much. Until next time, and please stay well. Bye-bye.